sexual, it's oral pleasure. And he said some remnants of the oral pleasure we can see in adults too. We see it in the movies, we see it everywhere. You want to kiss your love object, well, that's oral sexuality, it's definitely sexual, right? Well, babies want to kiss the mothers or to suck the mother's breast because they get some pleasure out of it. That's sexual, right? So distractiveness is the same thing, or envy is the same thing. This is the word, for the better or the worse. We just have to know that when we speak psychoanalytically of envy, we do not mean the conscious feeling of envy. That we definitely don't, right? If any of you is interested, I wrote a discussion article in the Psychoanalytic Quarterly some 4 or 5 years ago. You can look at under my name in the PEP web, you will find it there.
What's it called?
It's called One Envy or Many. One envy or many, with a question mark. And there was a discussion article of a younger colleague from California who presented her doctoral thesis on envy and asked me and 2 other analysts to write a discussion, and in my discussion you will find that. Right?
And what's that published in?
Psychoanalytic Dialogues. I said quarterly, no, it's Psychoanalytic Dialogues. It's the relational journal. It must be, yeah.
If a baby is not born, well, has some factor of envy, but maybe not extremely intense or strong, can the situations in the environment intensify that factor so that it looks like, the psychotic factor that we're talking about? It ends up looking like it.
Well, my first response, just because I want to stay very close to Bion's concept, because this is what we're studying, right? I would say that if we are talking of factors of the personality, we are talking of something that is innate. The environment has nothing to do with that. The environment can't increase it and cannot decrease it. What the environment can do is it can modify the function of the factor. It can modify that, what the factor can do, right? To draw a parallel, right, that is familiar to all of us. For instance, your being extremely allergic is a factor of your physical body. You are or you're not. You may be very allergic and you may be not allergic at all. This varies from person to person. The environment does not change that factor. But what the environment can contribute to is that that factor can cause you an allergic reaction, which is different from the allergic factor. Right? The allergic factor is the disposition to. It's something that's in your genes that you bring to life. You can have, for instance, a gene that gives you celiac disease. You have intolerance to gluten. Now, if you do not eat gluten, then everything will be pretty much okay. But the factor won't change. You still have gluten intolerance as a factor in your physical body. The function may change. That is, the environment can do something to make it better or to make it worse. You eat gluten-free, your environment then, gluten-free environment, is protecting you from the function of that factor. You eat with gluten because you don't know that you have a problem, and you have all kinds of celiac problems and you don't know where on earth they're coming from. Well, the same happens with envy. It's a factor in the personality, right? It can go better or worse. Klein brings several examples, right? For instance, that sometimes, well, a very good and attuned mother can increase the function of the factor of envy.
Now, what would that be?
Well, how would that be? Well, you can see it clinically, for instance, when a patient gets very upset or has a negative therapeutic reaction to the good understanding that the therapist or the analyst has, that would be an envious reaction, or rather the expression of the factor of envy provoked by the presentation of a very good object that might then get idealized, as O'Donnell said, and that makes things much worse, right? That now needs to be pulverized, attacked, along with your own apparatus, because you can't bear such a wonderful object. But it can also happen in case of frustration. For instance, Melanie Klein brings a very nice example of an envious patient of hers, where close to break, summer holiday or something, her patient, who was analyzed in Vienna and in German, or in Berlin probably, in Berlin I think, the patient had a dream that a woman came in with a tray with petit four, remember that? With a tray of petit four, but didn't offer them to her and just walked away. Now, the patient's associations were that petit in French means small, and in German, the translation is klein. Klein means petit, means small, little. And that linked, of course, the petit four to something related to her analyst, who was Mrs. Klein, Mrs. Petit. Melanie Klein interpreted that the fact that she, Klein, was going away for vacation was expressed by the patient or felt by the patient as Melanie Klein taking away the petit four, taking away what she had to offer, showing it off and going away, taking it and keeping it to herself, which made the patient envious, because now Melanie Klein had these petit four that the patient felt interested in, but she was keeping them to herself. So frustration can also lead, or deprivation, if you like, can also lead to envy, right?
But it seems to me that a person that can dream and make dream elements of something like that is different.
It is.
Than a patient who has a factor of envy, because I'll give you an example. I was sick a few weeks ago and I had to cancel the third session of the week of a patient. So I saw her Monday, Tuesday, and I don't see her Wednesday. I see her Thursday, and I canceled Wednesday for Thursday. And the following week, she's in a very negative therapeutic reaction right now, so that was on top of it. I think triggered by my announcement of my vacation time in June. But what she did the following week, because she can't talk about it or think about it, is that she came Monday and Tuesday, and on Wednesday she sent me an email saying that she was under a lot of pressure cooker at work, and she wanted to relieve the pressure, so she was going to cancel her Thursday time.
Excellent.
And so she just retaliated like that, right?
Yes, very good.
And it's very interesting, because I have been seeing this patient for almost 5 years, 6 years, and this is the first time I've canceled for being ill, and I was really sick. And she treated it as if I had a cold or something,
Yes, yes.
And when I bring it to her attention, she said, it is like, she says, well, I was thinking of canceling that day anyway, because I don't like coming here when I don't feel like I can talk, and so it was the same. I said, no, it wasn't the same, because I was really sick, but you wouldn't have been sick.
Right, yes.
It wasn't the same,
yes,
right? But maybe you feel like I was just brushing you off.
Right.
That I just didn't want to see you. And it's so interesting, because she is in that place where she doesn't want to talk, and I have to find a way to be with her. And then suddenly she says, I feel you're standoffish, and I said, well, how am I standoffish, She said, well, it's like I'm silent and you're being silent, and it's like you're trying to see who can be more silent. And I said, oh, I see. You know, you want to be unavailable to me, but you don't want me to break the connection with you even while you're doing that.
Right.
But it's so difficult because she can't take any of that. It's like she's in this stuck place that she can't get out of when she gets there.
Right.
But
So
anyways.
I think you are helping us again to see that an innate factor of the personality, like envy, can have different gradients of intensity, right? In the case of Melanie Klein's vignette of the patient with the petit four, it was not that severe that it would destroy her ability to dream. It didn't destroy her mental apparatus. It was evidently not a psychotic patient. She could dream about her feelings that would cause her to be envious, right? And she would bring that to her analyst, who could then make sense of it and interpret it. Your patient felt perhaps the envy more like a pressure, and we will talk about that in a moment, a pressure to get rid of rather than elements to put together in the form of a narrative, a fantasy or a dream or a verbal thought that could be talked about. Therefore, it's a patient in whom the envious factor is probably higher than in Melanie Klein's. In a schizophrenic patient, that factor would be so strong, right, so powerful, that it would function in such a way that it would take over even the non-psychotic part of the personality that would, for as long as the psychosis lasts, be hardly noticeable. And all that the analyst or the therapist would get is the patient's psychosis. But let us move on now. That is, let us go into Bion's epistemological period, which is what we had actually planned for today, and what we're going to finish these seminars with next week, right? This is another period in Bion's studies or Bion's interest, right? After he had had his experiences treating schizophrenic patients and wanting to apply Melanie Klein's concepts and Melanie Klein's work to see how useful that could be as a tool to understand psychosis. And he made some headway. He said here and there, I think Blandoni mentions it too, that several of his patients that were treated psychoanalytically on the couch 5 times a week without changing the method, changing the interpretations, but not the method, right, made enough improvement to be able to go back to work and to support themselves, which certainly, if we think nowadays of schizophrenic, that is quite a thing, right, to say. And Bion trusted that that was due to the analytic work. But then Bion went into this other terrain, and this is where he started really to go beyond Melanie Klein's ideas and make his own developments now. That is the epistemological period. And this, I think, is what Bion's work is most valuable for. I think this is the most interesting part of Bion's work, because it's really creating something that completely didn't exist before. While the psychotic period was an application of what Melanie Klein had said, now this is Bion's own creation, right? That is the theory of thinking, and how a mind grows, how a mind develops itself bit by bit, and also what can go wrong in the development of the mind and the ability to think. So the first thing that we want to know there is that Bion tried to be as scientific as possible in his studies, in his theoretical developments, and wanted to create what he called psychoanalytic notation, right? To operate with the psychoanalytic concepts as